Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to the organizers of the Open Publishing Fest. We're thrilled to be here. It's been a great, I hope many of you had a chance to see a number of different events over the last 2 weeks. There have been some great ones and really sort of rich material and a lot of things that I've been inspired by. I'm going to be looking up and researching more after this. Today we're here to talk about Quire, our open source publishing, multi-format publishing tool that we've been working on at the Getty, which is a museum and arts institution in Los Angeles. Without further ado, we will have, my name is Greg Albers. My name is Greg Albers. I'm the digital publications manager at the Getty. I'm joined today by Erin Dunigan, community manager for Quire as well. And then 3 of our beta users for Quire are going to be talking about their individual projects, and we'll introduce them later as we go on. We will keep our eye on the chat as well if you all have questions, but we expect to also have some time at the very end for questions that if you all would like to ask them. So I'm going to start today with just a couple minutes to give you a background on Quire and digital publishing at the Getty and how we've come to develop what we're now calling Quire. It really started for us at the Getty with the Online Scholarly Catalog Initiative, or OSCI, O-S-C-I, which was started by the Getty Foundation, our philanthropic arm, in 2009. It was about a 6-year initiative that gave 8 different art museums money to explore the idea of whether they could publish their collection catalogs online and on a website. So collection catalogs were traditionally published in print. They were big, heavy reference volume tomes. They were expensive to produce and expensive to purchase once produced, and they were often immediately out of date once published because collection information was constantly being updated, new research was being done. So the Getty Foundation, all told, spent almost $5 million to these different institutions to sort of explore this avenue of digital publishing. At the end of that, it was a success. All 8 museums did publish collection catalogs online. Many of them have gone on to publish more. And largely it was sort of what started as a question of like, can we even publish? Like, can these things be published online? Would they be accepted as web publications versus print publications? The question at the end was more like, yes, that's answered, we're gonna do that. But how do we do it best? There were also some challenges at the end that the sort of cohort of 8 museums identified. Finding the catalog remained an issue. So once you published a web book and you put it on your homepage for a little bit, once it came off that homepage, where does it go? How do people find it? Reader confusion about catalog boundaries. So if you're on a website, if that website is integrated into the rest of your institution or other networked out to other sites, where does your book stop and start? Preserving the online catalogs for the public. Of course, how do we make a website or a web book rather last more for a book length of time rather than a website length of time? And then sustaining the practice of digital publishing internally. So for me, that boils down to sort of issues of discoverability, longevity, and objectness. And these are the things that we had in mind as I came aboard at the Getty 6 years ago and started to try to figure out our own digital publishing program. Around the same time, the Mellon Foundation released a report that came to much similar conclusions. I'll just read this quote. It's among the many issues about the digital publication of monographs, 2 emerged of particular concern: the long-term preservation of digital monographs and the ability of university presses to ensure that digital publications reach their desired readerships. So again, longevity and discoverability. So at the Getty, we kind of took those challenges to heart and we came up with some core principles that we wanted to pursue and wanted to sort of focus on in our own publishing efforts. I'm not gonna read all of these, but I just wanted to highlight a couple. The first one there, making the book readable for people and machines. I think as in the Opening Publishing Fest, this has come up a lot, this notion that it's not just about you want great typography, you want people to be able to read your book, read your work, your journal, but also we need machines to be able to read them as well. We need them to be interoperable, we need them to be able to be discoverable through search engine optimization or search engines and that kind of thing. The second one there, put books where people are looking for them. So this is something that we discovered early on, the idea that, and I mentioned, you know, you put your web book up on a website, and then how do people find it ultimately? There's of course a rich history, rich infrastructure built around print publishing, about discoverability for print books and how that operates. People go to look for books at, you know, in their library, on Amazon, in Google Scholar, Google Books. So how do we facilitate discoverability in those existing channels when we're doing digital publishing online? And then the very last one, and I wanted to point out that assume that despite all your efforts, it will all eventually break. We just want to always go in with the idea that we want the scholarship, we want our authors' work to last for decades, for centuries, and we know that we're doing everything we can to sort of try to preserve that, try to maintain that. But we're also going to assume that it's going to break, and we're going to always try to, you know, always be looking for the next way of preserving. So all of these things, all this history has led us to what we now call Quire, which is our multi-format publishing tool, and again, optimized for those dual needs of discovery and longevity. And Quire has a number of different features sort of built in. It's really optimized also for being for scholarly work and for visually rich material as well, coming from an art museum. So page level citations, footnotes and bibliographies, zooming images, rotating images, video and audio embeds. These are the kinds of things we're either have built or are building into Quire, and to make a really rich reading experience. Quire, all of our material, Quire book is kept in plain text. So it's, no matter what the source material for Quire books is always in a plain text format, and then it's from that plain text that we generate these multiple formats. That plain text that I'll talk about in a minute. That plain text really is a sort of a hedge against that longevity issue, to make sure that no matter what happens, no matter what other parts of the software or other formats might degrade or break, that we can always go back to this sort of core content in as sort of simple to read and process a format as possible. And then the multi-format. So Quire outputs a web version, which is what we consider the primary edition, and then it also outputs ebook formats, ebook editions, and a PDF that's formatted for print. And at the Getty, we do print we distribute all of these formats, including the print editions as well, right alongside our other print books that we do throughout the course of a year. On the technical side, so it's built around Hugo, a static site generator. We use Prints XML for PDF output. Of course, we're looking, I hope you all have been hearing about Page.js in a number of different sessions, and we're definitely looking at that as well and excited about the developments in Page.js for PDF output. We use Pandoc for EPUB and KindleGen for Mobi. And then Quire itself is a command line interface. It's a CLI that is written in JavaScript and is used to kind of chain together all of these different pieces and output the books in the way that you might expect. We manage everything on GitHub. All of Quire itself is on GitHub. And then we also manage our individual books on GitHub as well. And there's documentation at that link there. And we'll be pasting links in the chat box as well as we go. This approach probably sounds familiar too if you've been, there's some other tools out there that do similarly. Earlier this week, I heard about Arthur Atwell's electric book project, which is great and built on Jekyll, very similar kind of tool chain and similar approach. Yesterday, Julie Blanc talked about the project she worked on with Antoine Fachet it was a collection catalog at the Musée Saint-Raymond, where they use Jekyll as well. And Page.js and output sort of multi-format. So this is a kind of, this approach of static site generation and multi-format output is out there in the world and being used, which is great. And Quire's really trying to pursue that as well. And again, really focused on sort of visual output and visually driven publications. So just last, so Quire, we've published about 11 publications in Quire at the Getty. We've got 15 more approved projects in the pipeline for the next 3 or 4 years, and then we have new proposals coming forward that we're looking at and approving every month. So there'll only be more. So we're very invested in Quire and in this approach and in these published publications. And now we're just now in this sort of the last year or so have been sort of turning our attention to bringing Quire out to be open source and out to the community. And that's what's really going to drive the rest of the session today. So I'm going to pass it off with that to Erin Dunigan to talk more about the community work on Quire. Thank you.
Okay, great. So now we know what Quire is and how it came about. And I'd like to now turn the conversation towards our community and how together we're forging a path for Quire's future. While the Getty originally developed Quire in response to its own publishing needs, it quickly became apparent that many other institutions and individuals were seeking a similar solution for the long-term sustainability and increased discoverability of their publications. Now that the Getty had proof of concept with successful publications like Ancient Terracottas, Roman Mosaics, and Introduction to Metadata, in 2018, the decision was made to move Quire towards an open source model and enable beta access. Through our beta program, we continue to welcome new users who will not only utilize Quire to create beautiful publications, but who will also meaningfully contribute to its growth and health as a publishing tool. We've actually included a link on the slide here. If you're interested in becoming a beta user today, feel free to sign up. Our goal is to launch Quire as fully open source by 2022. A community-supported model would enable Quire to remain free to use and would ensure a long lifespan outside of the Getty. I was brought on a few months ago as the Quire community manager to help us reach this goal. As community manager, my role is to cultivate a robust and diverse community of active Quire users and those contributing to its code. I work closely with the Getty software developers and Quire's product manager. I act as a liaison between them and the community, relaying our users' needs and any issues they run across so that together we can continue to improve and fine-tune Quire's capabilities. Since the launch of beta access, we've had over 150 users sign up to test our publishing tool. Over the past 2 months, we conducted both one-on-one interviews and a survey to not only get to know our users, but also to better understand how they use Quire and how it can be improved. Quire is a highly flexible and customizable tool, which means it has drawn interest from a really diverse range of users, most of whom kind of fall within the realm of scholarly visual publishing. Our community members work at museums, libraries, universities. Oftentimes, they're just individuals who come across Quire and want to give it a spin. We have educators, students, curators, editors, and researchers, as well as designers, web developers, and artists, all using Quire. And really, this is just to name a few of our user types. It's an incredibly diverse community. In our survey, we reviewed the Quire beta experience with our users. Examples of some of the questions we asked include rating of overall experience, most exciting and challenging aspects of Quire, whether or not our users chose to customize any elements of the tool, and if they'd recommend Quire to a colleague or peer. We also asked about our users' current state of engagement, and it was really exciting to see the high percentage of users that are actively working on a first project or have already published something and plan to use again for a second, or in several cases, third time. We also asked what features our users would like to learn more about. Creating new theme templates, deployment and distribution, and customizing styles and fonts were by far the most popular answers. We really rely on this kind of feedback for our users to not only help us improve and refine Quire, but also to help us develop new tools and resources. We're always working to make Quire more accessible, especially for users lacking in technical knowledge or support. As we look ahead to the future, Greg, the Getty developers, and I are taking this valuable feedback and working on exciting new developments to push Quire into the next stage of its growth. This includes releasing a roadmap that will communicate important milestones, version updates, new features, and bug fixes. We'll be refining our documentation as Quire continues to evolve and develop. This includes encouraging more user contributions. We'll also be relaunching our website with new branding and additional tools and resources, including short video tutorials and step-by-step guides, walking users through the basic features and functions of Quire. We'll have a community forum that will enable users to ask and answer questions, share ideas, raise issues, etc. And we'll have a publication showcase celebrating the incredible work our users have been doing, in addition to hopefully inspiring new users as well. In the near future, we also hope to host and participate in panel discussions and workshops spotlighting Quire at upcoming conferences, whether virtual or IRL. Hopefully, we can see each other face-to-face soon. Finally, we'll be launching a Quire ambassador program within the next year, and we're really excited about this. We're looking for Quire lovers and super users who are passionate about bringing Quire into their own communities and expanding its reach. None of this would be possible without the enthusiasm, feedback, and support of our community. We'd like to take a moment to shine a spotlight on how some of our users have been making the most of Quire. We feel this really is the best way to understand what Quire is and the versatility it has to offer. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jana Swartzman-Broski, Program Director at Mills College Art Museum, Nancy Professor of Art History and Associate Dean at Binghamton University, and Amanda Helton, Manager of Digital Strategy at the San Jose Art Museum. Just want to thank you for joining us today and telling us more about what you've been working on. And just a reminder, as Greg mentioned, we will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, please put them there and we'll have a brief Q&A after the presentation. You can also feel free to reach out to any of us directly. So thank you, and I'm passing it over to Jana now.
All right, so I'm Jana Swartzman-Broski. I'm the Program Director from Mills College Art Museum. I want to first thank Greg and Erin for inviting me to participate on this panel, and also thank Getty Publications for including MCAM as a beta tester for the Quire program, which has been very supportive of our digital strategy. So, before I talk about why Quire is a good solution for MCAM, I think it's helpful to provide some context about our institution. So we are a small college located on the campus, a small museum located on the campus of Mills College, which is a small liberal arts school in Oakland, California. We are a destination venue, meaning that we're not easily accessible by transportation, public transportation. We're not even though we're part of a major city, we're not located downtown. So it's kind of a schlep to get here. We primarily, we present 4 to 6 contemporary exhibitions per year in our 6,000 square foot main gallery, which you're seeing now here on your computer. And then we also have a permanent collection of over 13,000 objects, which primarily exists in 3 storage facilities we have on site, but we have very limited exhibition space to share our permanent collection. So Quire supported our digital strategy in a few ways. When I first started working at Mills, our digital presence was pretty much limited to our website and a small following on our various social media channels. So my goals when I arrived were to prioritize providing access to engaging and informative exhibition content to a larger audience, to make our collection more visible and accessible online, and to create opportunities for new scholarship for students and art historians. Quire helped us strengthen our digital strategy towards those goals in a few key ways by helping us overcome some challenges that we were having with audience engagement and audience development based on our location, that destination piece that I told you, and our limited exhibition space for our collection. And providing access to our audience. So our audience, we're not SF MoMA, like I said, we're small. So our audience is quite small and very targeted and specific. It's primarily students and researchers, art historians, other arts professionals and artists. And we do have like a small, very loyal local Bay Area arts audience that we get through the door. But specifically, our audience is researchers and academics primarily. So that's the audience that we want to build, and that's what the audience that we want to invest our digital activities towards. So in order to do that, because based on our venue and location, we needed to create distributable content that kind of can exist and circulate beyond the limits of the museum site. So publishing is a perfect opportunity to do that. As far as our collection being online, while we have digitized and photographed almost all of our collection, and that we do have an online portal for browsing that, it's not very searchable, and it's not actually very searchable by a Google search, so it's not very discoverable as it currently is. And the search capacity on the collection site is also very limited. You can't search by keywords, you can only really search by broad categories. And then finally, we have one of the most popular programs that we have in the arts department at Mills College is our Museum Studies program. And the Museum Studies program is run by our director, Stephanie Hayner, and it was one way of providing students with hands-on research opportunities to work with our collection, and then also to create scholarship around our collection that we could distribute to larger audiences. However, we used to have an exhibition space for the Museum Studies show, which was in our back gallery, but because of issues with ADA compliance, we're no longer able to use that space. So we needed to find some other kind of takeaway or achievement for our students through the Museum Studies program that could demonstrate the research that they've done and their scholarly research they've done in our collection, while still, again, making our collection more visible to a larger audience. So again, having a digital catalog was the perfect solution towards that. So we had done, to distribute content, we've done a lot of print publications on exhibitions in the past, but as you all know, and as Greg mentioned, print publications are quite costly. The printing in and of itself is quite costly. Distributing and shipping print publications is expensive. And hiring a designer to kind of create the publication layout is expensive. Furthermore, circulation and distribution of our print publications has always been a challenge. We have a very kind of convoluted point of sale system at Mills College because we just have a limited infrastructure for doing any online sales. People would typically have to purchase the books at the museum that we sell. And then we're also at the whims of kind of the distribution channels that are available for arts books, like DAP, Distributed Arts Publishers. So they have to approve and be willing to distribute our books nationally or in other stores. So as you can imagine, our book storage facility is reaching capacity. We have a lot of publications, but not a lot of room for them. So we needed to figure out an alternative that was cost effective. So Quire was a perfect opportunity. It cut costs. We could then invest the money saved on printing and distribution towards paying writers and contributors to write fresh new scholarship on our exhibitions and artists. And we could circulate it ourselves fairly easily. We could host this catalog on our website. It didn't require extra physical storage space. We could distribute and share that information through our digital newsletter, through social media. We do have a publications page, so that supports the longevity aspect of the digital publications, right? We have a page that links all of the digital publications that we create in the same space as our print publications for people to access. And it was they were far more discoverable in terms of distribution and circulation. That SEO and metadata really helps anybody who's looking up artists from our collection or from an exhibition that we've presented. We're much more likely to show up in their kind of searches and search engines now that we have these hosted digital catalogs on our site. So the first exhibition catalog that we did was for an exhibition called In Plain Sight. It was a group show that included 4 artists and was a guest curated by Daniel Nevers. These artists were kind of high profile for the museum. They were either mid-career or, you know, they're getting into becoming pretty late career established artists. So it was a perfect opportunity to take advantage of the Quire software, both for that searchability piece, and we had really great documentation from these artists that we could present really beautifully in the digital catalog. So what you're seeing here, just a couple examples of the section for Dario Robleto, who's one of the artists in this exhibition. Again, we didn't have to hire a designer because the templates already look so kind of professional and polished. I could, by myself, and with the support, obviously, of Greg and Erin and kind of walking me through troubleshooting it, I could create this really polished, professional-looking catalog without having to contract an outside developer or designer. And then, of course, there is the high-res and zoomable images that were available as well. So the images looked very professional, and the artists and the curator were very pleased with it. And now they had this catalog and fresh new writing from 2 contributors that we were able to engage for this program to share with their networks, which also increased kind of visibility and followers to our website and our social media channels. The next project that we did was the Student Museum Studies permanent collection research. So our director Stephanie provides the students in the Museum Studies course with the broad theme under which to curate an exhibition with works from our collection. The students are then asked to do research to create your standard kind of exhibition text and wall labels, as well as essays for publication. In the past, that publication had just been like a PDF with embedded images. It wasn't very beautiful. It primarily existed on a as a printout on a stool in the museum. Obviously, this was an upgrade for the students. This is something that they can link to on their CVs when they leave school. It's their first, for a lot of them, it's their first kind of publishing credit that is discoverable on our website. And it's a beautiful achievement for them to leave with, because most of them take this class in their senior year. Further, for us, it's an extra opportunity to make our collection visible online. So again, I talked about the searchability and discoverability of artists in our collection and how the SEO and metadata within the Quire publication really helps make that happen, helps drive traffic to our site and these publications when folks look up artists who we potentially have in our collection. And then finally, we just recently used the Quire software for our senior studio art thesis catalog. This is the first time we've ever done this, and we had to do it in response to the COVID-19. So fortunately, we already had some experience creating Quire catalogs. When California went on lockdown, the Bay Area is one of the first regions in the US to go under lockdown in March. A week before the students were scheduled to install their senior thesis exhibition, which they've been working hard on for years and were so excited about. They're clearly devastated to not be able to install their show. So we had to quickly find some sort of channel to demonstrate all of the work that they've done this year. Which of course isn't a substitute for their exhibition, but it's another great way to acknowledge their achievement while also giving them that professional development component that they can leave with. So we were quickly able to pull images and documentation together of the work they had done thus far. Using their artist statements, we created a kind of beautiful documentation of their hard work that they were able to, share with their friends and family, that we could share with our audience online. that now exists on our website. And we were also able to promise them that we could do a second edition with images of their work once it's actually installed in fall, should we be able to do that. So the students were pretty thrilled with this as an alternative, right? They can link this on their CV. It's, you know, for curators who aren't likely going to come to like a senior exhibition at Mills College. Now they have kind of this portfolio, this extra portfolio piece. This was so successful that we received, after we launched it and announced it on our in our electronic newsletter, we received many emails from faculty and staff, both at Mills and from staff and faculty at other arts colleges, saying that we should do this for every future student exhibition, just because it's such a beautiful documentation of their work. So that's one of our plans now. This will be kind of institutionalized as a reoccurring asset for the students. We're really grateful for this spring. So yeah, that's why Quire was such a good fit for us. We had researched other softwares, but they weren't as user-friendly, and I'm not a developer. I don't have that expertise, so Quire was the perfect fit. So I just, again, want to express my gratitude for being able to beta test this. I learned so much in the process, and both Greg and Erin were fabulous to work with and very supportive. So thank you. Now I will pass it off to Nancy.
I can try to do this. Okay. So I'm sharing my desktop as I did yesterday, and are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Nancy and I am a professor of art history at Binghamton University. And I would also like to thank Erin and Greg, who've just been terrific to work with. And I'm a big fan of Quire, and really thrilled to be able to reflect upon the experience of working with Quire. So just as some background, for the past about 5 years, I've been very interested in thinking about the various ways that we can present academic research and academic work using openly available digital platforms that have the capacity to reach new and wider audiences, while also enabling the inclusion of dynamic multimedia content. And I also want to say that I really think that these platforms have a lot of potential to serve beyond delivery mechanisms, that when they are implemented properly and when they're understood, I would say in a holistic way, they can really end up shaping the nature of the work that we do and the kinds of questions that we ask as scholars. So I also think it's important to try to integrate these platforms into our research processes from the start. So I've been really interested in advocating for digital publication and digital publishing for my own work, but also for the work of my students. And I'll just follow Jana in talking about the potential of digital platforms for student work. And I find that students are really enthusiastic about using outward-facing platforms to present the findings of their research that they do for courses. And that this particular generation of students, both undergrads and grads, are not necessarily that interested in spending all of their time writing really long research papers that only one person will read, for instance, meaning the professor. And so there's a great deal of potential there. And I have tried to work with colleagues on my own campus, as well as colleagues in my field on other campuses, to think about how these platforms can serve as viable channels to publish research. And I would say that a lot of scholars, I think, are still slow to move into the realm of digital publishing. So this is one of the more daunting areas of development. So those are the aspirations that I have, but there are, of course, lots of limitations. I work on a campus, a public university, where we do not have a lot of dedicated support for these kinds of endeavors. So for instance, we don't have an on-campus developer who might work to build a custom-made platform to present student work. If I want my students to work on a platform like Quire, I have to do most of the training myself. I do have some support from my colleagues in the libraries, but all of us rather, are really kind of learning how to do something ourselves, and then a few weeks later, then having to train others. And so we feel like we always just have to kind of stay in front of some of these technologies. And we also don't have a lot of tech support for troubleshooting. So for those reasons, I'm always looking for new and particularly out-of-the-box tools and platforms that can support the dissemination of academic work. And these are ones that really cannot require a lot of developer support. They can't be too difficult to learn because, as I just described, I'm usually the one who's doing a lot of the teaching and the support. For many reasons, I seek out free and open software. And they also have to be sustainable in at least the long term. And I mean, I very much understand that nothing that we build in the digital world can necessarily last forever. But, you know, we're often dealing with situations in which we have a student that might put together a project and then graduate the next semester. And so we want these projects to have as much longevity as possible. So with all of these caveats, I was really intrigued when it came to Quire. And I learned about Quire when I was at the College Art Association meeting in 2018, when Greg and his colleagues were presenting a workshop on Quire, which I took. And I was immediately interested in beginning to work with it. And it happened to be the case that at that time, I was co-editing a special issue of the online academic journal, Journal 18, which had just launched. And Journal 18 is a born digital publication, but it's published on a simple WordPress platform and supported by NYU. Each issue of this journal is guest edited on a particular topic. And the topic that I was working on with my colleague Carrie Anderson of Middlebury College was the topic of digital mapping. And so we thought that this would be a great topic that would lend itself to taking advantage of interfaces outside of WordPress. So in the end, we developed 8 articles with our authors, and 2 of them we presented on outside platforms. One of them was produced on Scalar, which you can see here, and the other on Quire, which is shown here. And I should say that we had experience working with Scalar before, but Quire was very new to us. And I also want to add that we had some financial support from the Association of Research Institutes in Art History, which provides a digital publishing grant that we relied upon for some support for help with these 2 projects, but actually mostly for the Scalar project. And so in the end, we produced a pretty small piece. I mean, it's a kind of modest endeavor. It's an article that was published on Quire, about 7,500 words, with 25 items of associated media that included mostly still images, but also a couple of videos and an interactive Google map. And I want to just be clear that I wasn't the author of this piece. The author was Hannah Williams of Queen Mary University in London. But I was the one who essentially then took her content and I transformed this content for Quire. And it was great to work with Hannah because she's someone who's very digitally savvy. So she was very kind of amenable to the idea of working with a new platform like Quire that was still being beta tested. But the important thing was that she herself didn't have the time or really the bandwidth to produce this as a Quire piece herself. And one thing I just want to put out there is a thing that it's a kind of issue I've been thinking about a lot, is that there are a lot of scholars who want to be publishing digitally, but they aren't necessarily willing to do all the labor to render their work on a platform like Quire or any other digital platform. And so there's this kind of question of intermediaries, people who need to kind of serve as a middle ground and kind of help them do this kind of development work. And in this case, I served as that intermediary. So in terms of what we produced, I mean, you can see the URL at the bottom if you want to navigate to the project. We were very happy with our Quire publication. We found it to be very sleek and largely intuitive in terms of how it could be navigated and used. We were very happy for the ability to include interactive content, as I just described. And the navigation between the notes and the text was seamless, which is really important for works like this that are scholarly works that are heavily documented. And the multi-format output was very desirable. Journal 18 normally produces again on its normal WordPress platform, but also with a PDF output. Of course, Quire also allows for an EPUB output as well, which was something that was a real enhancement to the normal offerings. We did a little bit of customization, but not a lot. You can see here this kind of teal blue color that we customized to fit the journal's brand. That's its kind of signature color. And the issue of durability, I think, is really the most important one. And I had the opportunity to revisit this project in preparation for this presentation. I actually had not looked at it in many, many months, maybe even over a year. And I was very happy to find that it was still working well. And this is a function of its static site as one that does not need a lot of maintenance. And I will say that the Scalar project that we produced at the same time has over the years needed a little bit of retooling and some kind of maintenance in terms of glitches that have come up in the course of the system updates that have been implemented at Scalar. And I don't want to make this about Scalar versus Quire, because I think they're both really important platforms that do different kinds of things. But I really do think that the longevity aspect here was very important, and it definitely seems to, it makes Quire a very attractive choice, I think, for those of us who want to put and disseminate our academic work and not necessarily have to continue to revisit it and make updates over time. So this project was admittedly a pretty modest project and a small project that I see as an on-ramp to Quire. And Amanda, for instance, will be speaking about her project, which is a lot larger in scope, and I think she'll be talking about the issue of scale. But it was a great way for me to get introduced to Quire and to understand what its possibilities were. And I definitely want to do another project on Quire. And I'm thinking about something that will be more ambitious, definitely bigger, much more image intensive. But because I did the small project on Quire, I have the confidence to move forward for something that would be larger scale in the future. Thank you.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Okay, can everyone see? Great. All right, so my name is Amanda Helton. I'm the manager of digital strategy at the San Jose Museum of Art. I'll also thank everyone for being here, and Erin and Greg for inviting me. I'm really excited to be able to talk about Quire and what we've done with it. And it's been a few years since I started tooling around with Quire, so it's pretty cool to be at this point where we're about to launch a publication next week, actually. So it's really exciting. So the publication that I'm talking about is 50 by 50 Stories of Visionary Artists from the Collection, and it is a 50th anniversary catalog. So our last anniversary catalog was for our 35th year, and it was a rather substantial print publication. And so when we were coming up on our 50th year, our director thought it made sense to do the publication digitally, in part because part of our strategic plan is to be a borderless museum. So the idea of accessibility and getting information about our artists and what we do out into the world and making that really easy to access is a major value. And it was really a driving force behind this project. So when I was brought onto the project in the very early stages, one of the first things I started doing was researching different platform options that were out there, what other museums were doing this kind of publishing online, and then how were they doing it? Were they just doing it on a blog? Were they using Medium? Were they, what were they doing? I do want to mention our sponsors for the project. This was primarily funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, but we have also received a lot of really generous support from donors for this project, as the city of San Jose. So in terms of platform options, the kind of two categories were the sort of more traditional sort of commercial publishing options, and then the static site generators sort of provide a foil. They're kind of different in sort of how they work. And so with more traditional publishing options, what I discovered was that there was really a necessity to have a content management system, and that would then have to be maintained over the lifetime of the publication. And I knew that we only had a couple of people on this project, and really not a lot of in-house technical expertise to maintain the publication over time, and a lot of complicated infrastructure around it. So it really needed to be like nimble and simple. And also the commercial options tended to be more costly, and there was really no guarantee that that service would be around for a long time. So we could potentially get really deep into a platform and then it kind of goes away in a few years if it's this really trendy startup kind of thing or something like that. Another concern was locking our content into proprietary system or software, making it hard for us to then pivot and use that content in a different way in the future when inevitably the technical landscape changes, because it always does and it always will. We wanted to be certain that our content would sort of remain evergreen and we could continue to adapt it and keep it alive no matter what happened. And then we really loved the idea of being able to put the publication out there in the world in a lot of different formats. So it was really, really highly accessible. And that is just a built-in feature that I didn't see being offered by any other options. And so that's one of the big reasons why we chose Quire, is because that functionality was sort of built in. So there's no CMS, it's just software and files on your computer, it's free. There was this immediacy to the platform. I could get in there and actually build a prototype myself, with some help from Greg, of course, to kind of get me started. But it was incredible that I could just go in and like do this and make it myself and then show everyone, you know, here's what it could look like. And then we have a sort of baseline on which to iterate from. Also, accessibility was a major driving force for choosing Quire because of search engine optimization and being able to provide accessibility for screen readers, as well as the multi-format publishing. I really came to believe that for this project, Quire provided the most cost-effective and user-friendly technology solution, and that it helped us ensure clarity of our design while minimizing effort, helping us to satisfy the very lofty aspirations of our grant narrative while maintaining technical longevity, which is, it's a tall order for sure. So here is a very high level kind of timeline to get a sense of kind of where the project started and where it is now. In June 2017, we began selecting artists. Our project curator at the beginning of the project began research and selection of artists. Technology and platform research was ongoing for quite some time. This was definitely new territory for our museum. We hadn't really done any projects like this before or at this scale. And we knew we wanted to feature 50 artists from the collection. So by March 2018, I was able to get an initial prototype up of the publication and some sample pages. And then in 2019, our original curator on the project left the museum, and Catherine Wade, who is currently a curator at our museum, took up the job of completing the writing for the publication, building off of the research that our previous curator had put together for us. Then, because our project, we really wanted to be more visually driven than a more linear book, which is, to be fair, what Quire is currently really optimized to deliver. It's really built to be more linear. But we really did want ours to be more visually driven, and we were really focusing on that. So we did end up needing to hire a designer and a developer to help us manipulate the templates a little bit so that we can make them look the way that we wanted. and a designer to just help us, you know, nail down the visual identity of the project. So right now we're in a editorial process that's just sort of a revolving process of batches of artists coming in and out of from the editor. And then mid-June, next week, we will, not next week, sorry, mid-June is actually the truth. Preview launch for 15 artists will be live. And then we do expect by the end of July to have all 50 in the publication. But by mid-June, people will be able to start to explore the publication and see what all is in there. And so this is a quick little demo of the site right now, what it looks like. It may end up looking a little bit different once we're all said and done. But this is the landing page. We have a very simple fade-in graphic. And then this is the table of contents. You can see all the artists are listed here. This area may end up becoming actually more visual in and of itself and less wordy because we have 50 artists. We don't want it to be like just a long scroll. But right now it's a bit of a scroll, but it's only for 15 so far. So you can select an artist from this list, or you can also use the search function to search the publication for whatever you're looking for. So here is Ruth Asawa's page. Each artist page features a grid of images, and each image has symbols that show you what kind of content is on that page. So here I'm showing that we have deep zoom capabilities. So for any object that we have high-res images for that can be zoomed into for greater detail, we've put a little kind of plus sign. Whoops. Let's try that again. Sorry about that. Rewound there for some reason. The forward and back isn't working super well. So, okay, cool. So there you can see the little plus sign. That means you can click into that. There's a play symbol. That means there's a video on that page. Again, the deep zoom is available for high-res images. So videos, we have audio, we have video, all the citations are clickable, so you can get a fully formatted citation from the page. Some have multiple types of content on the page, so they might have multiple symbols to indicate that. And yeah, that's a really quick little overview. If I were to distill down the top two key learnings, they're actually pretty basic. The first thing is to just scope really well and get really, really clear about what you're trying to accomplish, what's the most essential components to accomplishing that goal. And so just balancing out the resources that you have available, and not being afraid to consistently reevaluate your timeline and readjust it as necessary. We rescoped the project a couple of different times. At one point, I actually cut the number of assets in half because we had lost an employee from the project, and it was going to be me finishing all the copyright myself. So you have to be realistic about the time that you have, and to be able to take on what you can take on. And then just doing a lot of research and talking to people who've done this before was absolutely critical to the success of this project. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the colleagues that I talked to and Greg's help, and everyone that was really open and willing to share information with me. To that end, I'm very glad to talk about this project and about Quire and whatever. So however we figure out, if people want to ask questions, I'm very open to being contacted about that. And that is all. I think everyone's muted for me. I can't.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Jana, Nancy, and Amanda, for your incredible presentations. It's been really great to see what you've been doing with Quire and really the diversity of use cases and how it's provided these solutions for, you know, what work you've been doing on and for your institutions. So kind of as Amanda said, in lieu of a Q&A, if people just want to reach out to, you know, all of us directly with any questions, I think we'd be happy to continue the conversation. So thank you again. Thank you.